Okay, hello, I'm John Devlin. I'm the author of the 3 books, True Colours, on football kit history, design and culture, going back really to mainly from the 80s, but going a little bit further back as well. Write for magazines, I've contributed to books, programmes, and occasionally even TV and radio. So that's me. Jay, would you like to introduce us?
Jay Handley. I blog on designfootball.com and I contribute to the Kit Bliss podcast, contribute to Football Shirt Culture at times, and I appear on various podcasts talking about football kits.
And I'm Phil Delves. I'm a kit writer, commentator. I basically spend my day on Twitter talking about kits, mainly writing for footy.com and a few other sites as well. But I'm quite new to this game, so it's good to be here.
Good stuff.
Hi, I'm Sarah Collins. I'm a senior lecturer at Manchester Metropolitan University. So I teach sportswear there, but my research is around football kits and football fans and notions of kind of identity and memory relating to those.
I'm Motherby. I'm the founder of Hull City Kits. It's a site dedicated to researching the history of the football club's kits. I'm also a bit of a kit collector. I collect Match 1 shirts, and I've curated a couple of exhibitions about that.
I'm Adam Shearsmith. I also work with Les with Hull City Kits, doing exhibitions and collecting Match 1 shirts from various clubs, but mainly Hull City.
Fantastic. So a wide selection of kind of kit credentials there, I guess, but everyone coming at it from a slightly different perspective as well. But I mean, I'm interested, what was the first football kit that really captured your attention, that really made you think, that kind of moved something in you and thought there's more to this now? What was the first one?
The Liverpool Adidas one for me.
Adidas, what year?
The 91, 92.
Oh, okay.
So that one was the one that really first caught my eye and I wanted to have to wear out and about, playing football, that sort of thing. I just thought the aesthetics of it looked amazing. So that was the one that I really wanted, the first.
Is that the first Adidas equipment one?
It could well be, yeah.
Mm.
So that was mine.
I had a replica shirt before I'd ever seen Hull City play, and it was the first year that replica shirts had been made for Hull City by Admiral, and I always remember being fascinated by having it in red pinstripes in it, and my reasoning for objecting to that was, well, the only red you see on a tiger is if it's been shot. I couldn't really understand the introduction of a third colourway.
So you're digging into that concept even back then?
Before I'd even seen a game of football.
Yeah.
How old
What
were
year
you?
was that?
It was 83.
83.
This is one of the ones that started, like the ideas for research. It was my husband's, and it was a 1990s Manchester United shirt that he kept, and he's got a whole stack of them. But he got it out and started talking about it, and I thought, you don't necessarily keep for 15 years all of the clothes that you've had. So why do people like keep and collect what is essentially some pieces of polyester?
Sure.
It's not a bespoke garment, but it's like the identity, it's the memories that are wrapped up in those garments that make them kind of these personal archives that people, keep and treasure.
And actually, I guess that kind of ties in with where kit design is now. We can talk about that in a little while, but really, it is all about looking back to the past,
totally.
and actually what's coming out of those shirts. So football is inherently nostalgic, and I guess that's what you picked up on there.
Yeah, so they are like selling heritage and selling nostalgia.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the Kappa kits at Year 2000 for Italy in particular, and I was quite young at the time, but even then there was something quite interesting about them, the difference certainly with the other kits in that tournament, the slightly tighter fit and those sorts of things. And then even more so in 2002, all the little kind of stories like Cameroon with the sleeveless, but then sleeved kit, which they had to do for the World Cup. There was things like that, and there was always those big tournaments early on. I'd sort of be really interested just to watch the games, come home from school or start the day as it was in 2002. And that sort of became a way I was enjoying the tournaments really.
But it's interesting as well, picking up actually, Adam, what you said, the difference. That Liverpool kit was so different from what had gone before, and the Kappa kits were so different.
Yeah.
So clearly that was what caught your eye.
Sure. Yeah. The aesthetic pleasure of that shirt was the one that draws you in. as you say with the Italy shirt, it's a beautiful shirt. So why wouldn't you want to watch Italy games if you're looking at the shirt there? So yeah.
It's just a really good kind of quite purist, isn't it? The aesthetic
absolutely,
appeal is what's grabbed your
But
attention.
when you're smaller, that is the thing that grasps you, and it's something that looks nice, and that's what pulls you in. So.
Yeah.
Those are two quite seismic shifts, really, aren't
Yeah.
they? In the early 90s, the Adidas, the trefoil logo to the equipment logo, and then the Kappa kits coming in when shirts were quite baggy at that point. So there's a shift there. So that's the same for me. When Liverpool swapped from the last time they won the league, that kit with the white flecks on it, and they went to the equipment with big bars on the shoulder. That was like I had both of those shirts, the first two shirts I had, I think, certainly Liverpool.
What was the golden era of kit design? When it was, people could do no wrong.
I think now's a pretty good. I quite like what's going on at the minute, because they're cherry picking from the past. So but then sometimes you go, well, maybe that's a bit too derivative. But yeah, I like the variety that we've got today. But I think early 90s with Umbro coming in, and they had some big contracts at the time, and some of the things that they were doing, like flexing muscle a little bit. That was a good period, the early 90s. Yeah, when football shirts became a thing, the replica market really became a thing around then.
Do you think that was the time when it really kicked off, that replica market?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you've got a little bit going on before, but certainly in terms of sales, it wouldn't have really kicked in until the early 90s, I don't think. And football became more socially acceptable around then as well.
I think that kicked in with Euro 96. I think that more people felt it was a thing that you could wear your England shirt with pride walking down the street because the big tournament's on, and you can be part of something that was happening. And I think that was the main replica era.
Well, prior to the 90s, replica shirts were aimed squarely at kids, weren't they?
Yeah.
So it was sort of seen as a childish thing to do to wear your local team shirt. But as the decade progressed and the companies started to make larger sizes, that's when you started seeing adults wearing them and it becoming the norm.
People criticise overweight men in their 50s, and I'm not looking at myself in that era, but it's saying, why should you be wearing a football shirt? But actually, they were the people that wore football shirts first time round.
Who've grown
In the
up
70s.
with that,
Exactly.
wearing that garment.
So they've never not worn from Admiral right through to whatever's now.
The early kits were intended by the manufacturer that children would wear them as sportswear, that it would be purely functional. But if a child likes an item of clothing, they wear them all of the time. And so you were seeing shirts being worn out of that context of being used as a functional sportswear garment and being used as leisure wear. It doesn't seem unusual to continue wearing replica shirts when you move into your teenage years and into full adulthood.
What would you say, Les, is your golden
Golden era, I think the very early 1980s, it was the point where football shirts had gone from essentially being plain cotton t-shirts with a crest applied to something that was actually designed and thought was going into making it different from other kits. The switch had been made going from cotton to nylon and then to polyester. The change to polyester, I think, changed things because it could retain print, and so that opened up design possibilities, whereas previously any design element on a shirt had been added, it had been sewn on, stitched on, it had been a separate panel. That switch to polyester allowed you to sublimate a print on it and it keep on there. And also, and this is a personal thing, sponsorship wasn't universal at that point. So if you wore a team shirt, the branding that was important was the club rather than an airline or a betting company.
Okay.
So you was expressing, in much the same way that band t-shirts allowed people to show their musical loyalties, the advent of replica shirts allowed people to say, football's a very tribal thing, isn't it? And it allowed people to express that sort of tribal support for a football club for the first time.
But actually what you're saying is that it was purely the identity of the club that shone louder.
But nowadays people don't necessarily wear one particular shirt. So they might buy something for the design, for the colours, for the aesthetics, and because football shirts are quite cool as an item to wear at the minute, so it becomes less about that identity and supporting your club or your country, and more about just wanting to wear it as a garment.
Because it looks good.
Yeah.
Actually, you reminded me of that Man United first Adidas white away with the 3 stripes under the...
Yeah.
I loved that. I went into a big existential crisis. As an 11, 10-year-old boy, I thought, I want that. I can't wear it, but I want that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of what you're saying, I guess.
And there aren't any other garments where you would have had that dilemma, would you? You know?
Yeah, I once forgot my PE kit at school, which generally tended to be the 1990 Hull City home shirt. But there was one day when I forgot it, and there was like, oh, you need to pull something out the lost and found, and frankly, the only thing that would fit me was a quite itchy 1970s Admiral Leeds shirt, and I'll be quite frank, I felt violated.
Did you wear it?
I did wear it, and I felt unclean.
I think that late 80s, early 90s for me was a great period. I think we started to really see that kind of postmodern look. So we started to see collars coming back, whereas prior to that it had been very modern. Every kit design had kind of progressed, and it was the first time that the world stopped and said, actually, let's look back. And of course, this is where we're at the moment, I guess. Phil, did we touch on yours?
Yeah, I guess similar to Jay, really. I always like looking back at like Dortmund in the early 90s. So when Nike was sort of quite new on the scene, before they'd done any kits of the World Cup or anything like that, there's something quite fresh about that sort of progression. I think similar to PSG, 1 or 2 teams. So they only had a few big contracts at the time, but I really like seeing like all the kind of stuff with the sleeves. Again, it's the kind of stuff you're seeing now, really.
Yeah.
That area of the shirt that was really quite exciting. But yeah, I quite like seeing, I'd say kind of Dortmund kits of that era.
It's fascinating that, because I had one of those neon yellow Dortmund shirts. I'd seen it discounted in a local sports store and thought, you know, and because it wasn't another English team, I didn't feel it was incongruous to wear it.
Yeah.
And years later, because I tend to keep the stuff I have, I went to a Dortmund game wearing it, and I got to meet the fan representative at Dortmund, and before I'd even said hello, he said, I hate the shirt. He wanted to let me know that he thought it was abhorrent that they were wearing neon colours and that Nike had changed their identity. And yet the thing is, from my perspective in England, I'm thinking, this is fresh, this is new, this is absolutely sophisticated. You know, they've got insurance companies in German advertised on it. It felt like a new world to me, and it's fascinating. The perspective within Dortmund itself was very different.
Every football shirt has pros, has people that love it and people that hate it. I personally kind of heard nothing but good things about the women's shirts. What happened there? What was that phenomenon about those, do you think?
Willing to try things, maybe, because it was a different cut, and it was, I don't know, uncharted territory, maybe, that they thought they could, I don't know, flex design muscle again, the same thing a little bit.
Without that weight of expectation?
Yeah,
possibly?
Without so much of the tradition, maybe, and there's not going to be the outcry. Obviously, it's a strange thing, so I think it is a positive thing. But I wonder how we're going to look back on it in a few years' time, the idea of saying, you're a woman, you wear this, and you're a man, you wear this, that in effect discrimination in terms of the sportswear that you wear. I don't know if that'll always be seen as a good thing, but it seems to be positive at the minute. But the use of flowers, so it's just this idea that you can't do that with a man's shirt. I don't know why, but you wouldn't do that, but you do it for female shirts. And
I was going to say, the media push for the Women's World Cup this year was by far superior to every other year that they've ever had one.
Is that tapping into kind of politically, socially what's going on?
I'm not sure. I think there's just more females and more girls wanting to play the sport now, and they're not frowned upon for going to a stadium and watching a game anymore. I think it's just the norm that you go with your sister or your mum or your auntie or anything. It's not looked at as, oh, there's women in the crowd. It's just the norm, and I think that push of the media attention towards the women's game is exactly what it needs, and it got it fantastically for the Women's World Cup.
But then continuing that, and maybe going on from what Jay was saying, does that mean that they should, if it's the norm, Should they just be wearing the team, the international kit?
If
So
look
do you
at
want a
Holland-
country identity, or do you want a women's identity
That's what I'm
and a
wondering,
men's
yeah.
identity?
Because Holland have given their women's team their own identity with an amended crest, haven't they?
They have, yeah.
You know, the lions on a male lion has the big mane, the female lion doesn't. So they've removed the male mane
Different
detail.
nicknames. I know some women's teams have different nicknames as well. Does it go that far? Do they really make their own identity?
I think possibly they do, yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you've got a women's team that are doing better than the men's team, so like the Americans, for instance, the USA female team is by far superior to the male team. So why are the men wearing the female shirt?
Well,
That's
yeah.
what I'd love
Do you know,
to see
it's-
more of
it's-
that.
Yeah, and they had the
It works
discussion
both
about
ways.
the stars, didn't they?
Yeah.
And I think it was the away shirt was the same for the men's and women's, but they were saying, well, the men can't have the stars, obviously, because
Yeah.
of World Cup wins. But I think you're absolutely right about success, because
Yeah.
the USA have had bespoke kits for a few World Cups, albeit only subtle, but
Yeah.
to Germany. And I think, it sort of feels like it wasn't, for this year, the kind of the rules, or those rules, or those sort of, it was sort of out the window. It was now a lot more accessible in terms of bespoke designs. But not everyone did, of course, and I think there's still that element. I think that's a really good point about, do you need a different design? I think you do.
Or do they want a different
Yeah,
design? I think
yeah.
there's a set of players there, and I wonder whether those players are happy. I personally think whacking a flower on a women's kit is a little bit insulting, and suggests that we all.
There are men's shirts that have got
Really
love hearts on.
love
The Dutch
flowers.
team have.
Iron Veil.
Yeah, they have hearts
yeah,
all
that's
down
right.
their shirts.
They're
so
not hearts, though, are they? I think they're
Apparently
lilies
not,
or something.
yeah.
Aren't they? Yeah.
They look like hearts. though.
But
Yeah.
flowers.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah, but our England's men's team don't have that, do we? So if,
No,
if
no,
you're
agreed.
looking at like the men's and women's alongside each other,
Although the FA's badge does have the
Roses.
repeated roses, so I suppose that's how you look at it, isn't it?
yeah.
I wonder if it's more an issue of what it was previously, or the understanding was that the women's team would wear the men's shirt rather than a kit was designed for all of the teams that were representing the country. It was designed for the men, and you get that shirt as well. So this is kind of the next best thing, is to say, okay, well, we now give you your own shirt, so that's a positive thing. But eventually, hopefully, we'll get to the point where we go, okay, well, what is a shirt that men will look great in and the women will look great in, and then we combine them. But maybe you don't want that compromise when it comes to a cut. So a design goes into a design will complement a cut of a shirt as well, and obviously the men's shirts will be in a different cut to the women's shirts. So
And women's cuts, different versions, they've existed for some years, haven't they?
yeah, and they
Especially with
change the design
internationals.
slightly as well when they do that.
Do you think it could be like that whole kind of tech fit or formation thing with Adidas, where you can sort of
Yeah.
say to a team that these are the cuts or whatever,
Yeah.
and you can sort of give them the agency, give them the choice? Or
I think maybe if you do go down that road and say, here's a design that's for everyone, this is the national team design and it'll be worn by the men's team and the women's team, and then say, okay, we're going to adapt it slightly for when the cut changes, maybe that'll work, but you have a middle starting point for that, rather than starting at the men's end or starting at the women's end. You start in the middle and say, okay, can we change it slightly in each direction, so it always looks the best it can look.
It's something I've used when I did the exhibition, and it's one of my Twitter headings, is that ultimately it's the laundry that we support. You know, a player can move team, and we'll go from loving him to vilifying him. And what's really changed? Well, the clothing he's wearing.
Yeah.
It identifies him as something different, and players come and go. So this is what remains. And here's the thing: things can change. You can have radically new technologies, radically new materials, new prints, but there's still that same meaning behind it. That's what we support. The players change. That sense of identity that comes from the kit, that's what remains.
And actually sub-meanings, sub-identities, all this goes on as well. But it has that core purpose on the pitch and off the pitch.